My name is Richard Petherbridge, and I'm here to talk tennis. And today we're going to talk about the clay court season and also the transition that's going on in men's tennis. And what I mean by that is that, Djokovic, Federer, Nadal dominated men's tennis for well over a decade. And we're now entering uh, a new era in men's tennis. And I am basically predicting that, this new generation led by Sinner and Alcaraz um, and a number of other young, talented players is taking over. Um, and that makes it really interesting to sort of watch this transition in men's tennis. But let's go ahead and start off with a preview of the clay court season. Um, and in talking about the clay court season, let's focus on what I consider to be sort of the favorites or the top tier men's players in clay court tennis. So I'm going to put Djokovic at number one. I know some people would disagree with me if you believe that this transition in men's tennis has already happened and that Sinner and Alcaraz are already better players than Djokovic. You'd put them in a different order. Um, I'm putting Djokovic one. That's because he's won 3 out of the last 5 Grand Slams. And as far as I'm concerned, he's number one until you beat him. So when you look at Djokovic's season, right? It has been a subpar. 2024 has been a subpar year for him, right? He lost in Australia in the semifinal to Sinner, and that's a tournament that he's dominated. He's won 10 of them. So that was certainly a big surprise. He also lost at Indian Wells early to an unseeded player who was a lucky loser, last name Nardi. So of course that was a big surprise. Um, and then he recently lost to Sinner in the quarterfinal, excuse me, in the semifinal at Monte Carlo. So we have a really interesting, sort of development or transition going on in men's tennis. And the clay court season is going to tell us a lot, right? So we've got, 3 big events still remaining. We've got the Masters event in Madrid, followed by the Masters event in Rome, and then, of course, the Roland Garros Grand Slam event. And we'll have all of the top players, Djokovic, Sinner, Alcaraz, and perhaps Nadal competing, um, to see where we are in terms of who is the dominant player or players in men's tennis right now. I've talked a little bit about Djokovic. I have to say, in my opinion, he no longer is playing the best tennis in men's tennis. I put Sinner ahead of him. And on a good day, I put Alcaraz ahead of him, although Alcaraz has been less consistent and a little bit more volatile. And I do think that it's an interesting situation there, right? I think if Alcaraz plays his best tennis, that he beats Djokovic. But I think when he doesn't play his best tennis, Djokovic beats him, right? And it's one of those things where I guess what I would say is um, Alcaraz's ceiling is higher than Djokovic's. When he plays his best, he outplays Djokovic, but his floor is lower than Djokovic's floor, which creates a really interesting sort of dynamic happening right now. Let me move on to, again, talking about this dominant group of men's players right now. I'd put Sinner next, right? And the reason I'd put Sinner next is that he's had the best year so far. 2024, he's 25-2. He's only lost 2 matches, right? He lost to Alcaraz at Indian Wells, and then he lost to Rude. Um, no, I'm sorry, Tsitsipas at Monte Carlo. So he's had a great year. He won the Australian Open, his first Grand Slam event. He won in Rotterdam. He won in Miami. He's been extremely consistent, even his losses, right? His loss at Indian Wells came to Alcaraz in the semifinal, and his loss to Tsitsipas at Monte Carlo came in the semifinal, right? So the worst result that Sinner's had so far this year is a semifinal loss. Pretty impressive. Hard to have a better start to your year than that. Okay, so now we've talked about the sort of top four in men's tennis and this transition that's going on and looking at the clay court players. So let's take a little look at the clay court season so far. We had Monte Carlo last week. Monte Carlo's a Masters event. Tsitsipas won Monte Carlo. He also won it in 2022 and 2021. So that's his third Masters at Monte Carlo. He clearly likes that event. He feels very comfortable with the surface there. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to repeat that performance either in Madrid or in Rome or in Roland Garros. And I'm not saying that he doesn't play well and get to the quarters or around there, but he hasn't been able to repeat in terms of getting to a final or winning a final. And that would be great if Tsitsipas was able to take this win in Monte Carlo and win either in Madrid and Rome or win in Roland Garros, right? It would be huge for his career and it would shake him up, right? Because right now I have him in sort of the second tier of men's tennis, right? He's not a player that has won a Grand Slam. At this point, I don't see him as a player that's that likely to win a Grand Slam this year. I don't see him beating Sinner or Djokovic or Alcaraz in a semifinal or a final in a Grand Slam event. And it's a shame because he's very talented. He has a beautiful one-handed backhand. As someone who has a one-handed backhand, that's becoming a rare thing, right? I think he's the only top 10 player that uses the one-handed backhand. And I think it's a beautiful stroke and I love watching it. But I don't see him as someone who's going to challenge the top three. Now, the other player that made it to the final in Monte Carlo is Ruud, also a very talented clay court player. He also has made it to the final of Roland Garros. He went to the final in 2023 and 2022. Again, I don't see him as one of the top tier men's players, right? He's very talented. He is very consistent, but he hasn't shown that he has the ability to beat, one of these top three guys, Djokovic, Sinner, or Alcaraz, in a Grand Slam event. So that's sort of, looking at Monte Carlo, good performances by Ruud and Tsitsipas. Djokovic lost in the semifinal. Sinner lost in the semifinal. And so it'll be really interesting to see how they do in Madrid, how they do in Rome, and of course, leading up to Barcelona, right? Excuse me, leading up to Roland Garros. All right, well, so what's happening this week is Barcelona. So let's talk a little bit about Barcelona. Of course, the big news was Nadal lost his second round to de Minaur. The first set was close, 7-5. The second set wasn't. De Minaur won 6-1. Sadly, I think this is, Nadal wanted to play Barcelona so that his hometown fans would have one last chance to see him. And I think he understands that this is his last year. And I think as fans, we sort of understand that his best tennis is behind him. And it's unlikely that we're going to see, any glory for Nadal, even for the rest of the clay court season. I don't see him getting to a semifinal or a final. Another thing about Barcelona was that Alcaraz, who won Barcelona last year in 2023, pulled out at the last minute. He has a forearm injury, did not play. I do think that he will play in Madrid and Rome, and I think he'll be ready in Roland Garros, which is great for all of us because it sets up Djokovic, and Sinner and Alcaraz all in the same tournament, and we get an idea to see who's the most talented of those three right now at this moment on clay. And for Sinner, who's been the best player so far this year, I think there are some issues for him that clay is not his best surface. I mean, one of the things that we saw in terms of his hard court play is that he is so talented at taking the ball early and on the rise and hitting deep. And these are, these are skills that will win you a lot of hard court events. Hard to play that way on clay, right? Clay, you're not getting a true bounce. You can't take the ball as early. You have to sort of watch the bounce, follow the trajectory of the ball, give yourself a little more time if you're going to hit the ball cleanly. So it'll be interesting to see how much that affects Sinner's game. Let's talk a little bit about Madrid and Rome. Those are the two Masters events on clay coming up before Roland Garros. And Alcaraz won Madrid in 2023. It's played at altitude. It's a little bit faster surface than Rome or Roland Garros. And I think that does favor Alcaraz a little bit. So I think it will be interesting to see if Alcaraz is playing his best, if he's able to repeat in Madrid, right? That would be a really good sign for him. And he would use that confidence, I think, to do well in Roland Garros. So after Madrid is Rome. Medvedev, which is kind of unexpected, won Rome last year in 2023. I say unexpected. Medvedev is the number 4 player in the world, extremely talented hard courts player. Hasn't played his best on clay. So for him to win Rome, sort of a big deal. And it'll be interesting to see if he continues to improve his clay court game. At this point, I don't see him challenging Djokovic, Sinner, and Alcaraz on clay, but he's an amazing player, extremely talented, very mentally tough, and we'll see if he is able to take another big step forward in terms of his clay court game. All right, well, that brings us to Roland Garros. As I said before, I think you've got Djokovic, Sinner, and Alcaraz all vying for who's the best player in men's tennis on clay right now. And I think, of course, you can make arguments for any one of those three. I think it'll say a lot in terms of who wins Roland Garros and who is able to show they're the dominant player on clay in men's tennis right now. I have no idea. I gotta be honest with you. If I had to bet, I wouldn't know who to choose, right? Sinner, I think, has played the best so far this year, but I don't think clay's his best service. Djokovic has been showing a little bit signs of age. So it'll be interesting to see if he can get to a final or win Roland Garros. And of course, he won Roland Garros twice. So that would be a possibility. And then, of course, for me, Alcaraz, who's played really well on clay, won Barcelona last year, won Madrid last year. it would be great to see him playing his best tennis and would give him a lot of momentum for the rest of the year. So I think he's my favorite. I'd love to see him, step up his game. And I think it would make the rest of the year extremely exciting if Alcaraz was able to win Roland Garros. Okay, now there's a couple of younger players that I want to talk about, players that I've been watching this year um, that are extremely talented. They're not at the level of Djokovic, Sinner, or Alcaraz, not even at the level, in my opinion, yet of Tsitsipas and Ruud, but I think they will be. And so I'm encouraging you to sort of keep track of these guys. I think they're really entertaining and talented players to watch. The first one is Holger Rune. He's 20 years old. He's presently ranked 12 in the world. He also is someone who clearly is better on hard court. The strength of his game is coming to the net. I think that's easier to do on hard court than it is to do on clay. But he's an extremely talented player. He's a very fun player to watch because of the variety in his game. Because we don't have that many top 10 players who come to the net a lot. So it's sort of an interesting matchup when he plays other players. And I think they have to adjust a little bit. They're not used to someone who comes to the net and plays the net so well. So definitely, if you get the opportunity, watch some of Rune's matches. And I really see him as someone maybe not ready to win a Grand Slam this year, but has all the talent and all the ability. And if he continues to improve, I would think would be someone who could win a Grand Slam. The other young player that I want to sort of recommend is Ben Shelton. He's an American player. He's 21 years old. He's presently ranked 14. Ben Shelton's biggest weapon is his serve. He has a huge serve. I've seen him play. I was in Australia. I saw him play at the Australian Open. I was in Indian Wells. Also saw him play at Indian Wells. Every time I've seen him play, he has routinely served in the 140s. So that's his big weapon. He doesn't have a good enough baseline game yet to challenge, the top players, the Djokovic, the Sinner, the Alcaraz, but he's very close. And as soon as he develops a little bit more consistency and is a little bit better in strategically picking his shots and making decisions about when to take risks, I also see him as someone who is destined to win some Grand Slam events. And it'll be interesting to see him develop, right? Because players develop at a different pace, right? Some, like Alcaraz, jump very quickly to the top. Someone like Sinner, made a sudden move from being a second-tier player to a first-tier player right at the end of last year, the beginning of this year. So it'll be interesting to see if they are able to make that jump up to the next level of men's tennis. Okay, well, that's my take on the clay court season and the transition that's going on in men's tennis. And I have to say, as a tennis fan, I am so excited right now about these new young players and the future of men's tennis. I think we all have some amazing tennis in our future. All right, that's it for today.